Jesus' name. Amen. Okay, those of you who brought your Bibles, you need to open to Mark chapter 5. We're in the middle of this gospel study. We're going to go through the first 8 chapters through this fall, and then we'll do the second 8 chapters, Lord willing, next spring. And in the 5th chapter where we are today, this is one detour and distraction after another in just a day of Jesus. A daily moment in his life. Have you ever planned out a day and from the word go, nothing that you had planned happened? Yeah, that happens a lot, doesn't it? In fact, in our culture of maximum sufficiency, in our culture of time management skills, and all of the guru books that we have in the bookstores on these kinds of things, we might think that a day filled with that kind of one distraction after another might be a day wasted. But I think there's some real insight into your perspective on that, my perspective on that. Maybe a detour or interruption from our plans might not necessarily be a detour or an interruption from God's plans. Because we do believe He's sovereign, right? He is in reign of all. And that's what's happening in Mark chapter 5. You've heard the joke before, if you want to make God laugh, just tell Him your plans. Now that's a good point. Because in Mark chapter 5, Jesus and His disciples move from one interruption, from one detour to another. But through it all, it is obvious that their detours and interruptions didn't in one way veer from God's plans and purposes for them for that day. So let's get right into it. We're at Mark chapter 5, verse 1. Here we go. They went across the lake to the region of the Gerasenes. When Jesus got out of the boat, a man with an impure spirit came from the tombs to meet him. This man lived in the tombs, and no one could bind him anymore, not even with a chain. For he had often been chained hand and foot, but he tore the chains apart and broke the irons on his feet. No one was strong enough to subdue him. Night and day among the tombs and in the hills, he would cry out and cut himself with stones. When he saw Jesus from a distance, he ran and fell on his knees in front of him. He shouted at the top of his voice, "What do you want with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? In God's name, don't torture me." For Jesus had said to him, "Come out of this man, you impure spirit." Then Jesus asked him, "What is your name?" "My name is Legion," he replied, "for we are many." And he begged Jesus again and again not to send him out of the area. A large herd of pigs was feeding on the nearby hillside. The demons begged Jesus, "Send us among the pigs, allow us to go into them." And he gave them permission. And the impure spirits came out and went into the pigs. The herd, about 2,000 in number, rushed down the steep bank into the lake where they were drowned. Now, of all of the things that the disciples might have imagined happening that day, I guarantee you not one of them thought of this. No way. Barely do they pull their boat ashore, then some severely mutilated, chain-dragging, naked man comes running toward them. "I'm one of Jesus' disciples. I'm back in the boat and we're going. There is no way I'm sticking around for this guy." No, I'm serious. Today, even, you're going to have a hard time getting me to stay on that shoreline. No way. I'm getting in the boat and I'm gone. But Jesus' demeanor here is so calm and confident. Isn't it amazing? I mean, he tells the spirit to come out of the man. Come out. And then Jesus ends up conversing with him. I wonder what his disciples were thinking. Jesus, the guy is obviously insane and off his rocker, and he's probably going to hurt us. What are you doing conversing with this? Whatever it is. Jesus begins by asking his name. I find that just kind of humorous. You know, he says, "What do you want with me, Son of the Most High God?" And you just imagine Jesus, obviously you've got one on me. You know my name. And yours? Your name? "We are Legion, for we are many," you know, whatever. The demon calls himself Legion. You know how many a detachment of Roman soldiers was in an elite? 6,000. So it's not very far-fetched to say that there could very well have been thousands of demons in the one dude. And Jesus, rather matter-of-factly, enters into a sort of parlay with this demon possessed. I mean, it's just crazy to me. Yeah, your name is okay. Yeah, well, you want to stay here? They go into this little moment together, and the next thing you know, he sends the legion of devils out of the man and into a herd of pigs, where they rush off the steam embankment and into the sea and drown. A slight distraction to maybe what they had planned on doing that day. Maybe. Yeah. So we're going to notice something today in these 3 different episodes in Mark chapter 5. When Jesus shows up, there are different reactions. There are different reactions. And the first reaction we see is from the demons. Now, you did notice this. I tried to make emphasis when I read it. The very first thing demons do when Jesus shows up is not what you would expect them to do. You see what they do? The very first thing they do is run toward him. The second thing they do is kneel down. In your King James Bible, it actually says they worship him. They run toward him. They worship him. They acknowledge his identity as the one, supreme being. And then they say, hey, Jesus, what do you have in mind? What do you want with me? Okay. Is this only surprising to me? Jesus' arch enemies, people who have sold out to do nothing but loathe Jesus, despise Jesus, and are committed to fighting against Jesus. Those who are diametrically opposed to Jesus, if I made the point. They run to him, they worship him, they acknowledge his supremacy, and they say, what do you want to do? What do you want to do with me? I'm here. If that's how Jesus' arch enemies respond to him, you know what you are seeing right there? You're seeing true authority. You're seeing true power. Jesus comes on the scene and his enemies immediately and totally submit. They just say, you're it. And I know it looks like we've been fighting on separate teams, but by the way, I adore you, son of the Most High God. I mean, they're getting after it. I just find this remarkable. Who has the kind of power to completely dominate their enemy into that kind of submission? You guys, Jesus is way more powerful than any of us have ever thought. Way more powerful. That the demons react to Jesus this way makes you wonder, well, how are the people going to react? The demons, if this is what they do, honor, worship, and acknowledge, and what do you want? What are the people going to do? Pick up the text in verse 14. Those tending the pigs ran off and reported this in the town, in the countryside. And the people went out to see what had happened. When they came to Jesus, they saw the man who had been possessed by the legion of demons sitting there, dressed, and in his right mind, and they were afraid. Those who had seen it told the people what happened to the demon-possessed man and told about the pigs as well. Then the people began to plead with Jesus to leave their region. So, the demons react in utter submission, and the people react with fear, telling Jesus that he's unwanted. I think it's cool. Look at this contrast. The demons who knew who he was totally submit. The people who didn't know who he was ask him to leave. Okay, you guys are already ahead of me. I mean, you already went there. You know where the preacher's going with all this stuff. Is this not an accurate picture of our culture? Okay, go with me. People blindly rushing forward in life with absolutely no awareness at all of the impending doom that's right in front of them. Oh, have I still made it clear? Okay, let's keep going to the call. The contrast. People saw this restored man clothed in his right mind, and they feared that more than they did when he was insane. Okay, we want Naked Willie, the crazy man, back. This is too weird. You're acting normal and you look good, but you're freaking us out. Where's Naked Willie? People around that find help and deliverance made those who heard this nervous. They weren't so sure they wanted people to be delivered from their messes. Now, I told you a couple of weeks ago, some of you are really getting serious about Jesus. And you're showing up to church all the time, you're giving your money, and the people that you're close to who aren't doing what you're doing, you know what you are to them. They think you're a little off, and they're threatened. They're bothered by your submission. They're bothered by you going whole hog into this. They can't understand why you know what they're hoping? They're hoping it's like a diet. They're hoping it's like a diet, and the diet will wear off, and you'll gain back all your weight, and you'll still be back to what you were before. That's what they're hoping. Because they're sure not going to go on a diet. And they're hoping that you'll just kind of go back to your normal overweight self. That's what they're hoping. But there's something going on inside of you that's being regenerated, and you're being changed from one form of glory to another, and that's being done by the Holy Spirit, and they can tell this isn't going to stop. You're changing into the likeness of Jesus. And it's a threat. Can you imagine a world or a culture threatened by Christianity so much that they don't want to have any notion of Christ or any notion of the Bible? They want all of that removed. Can you imagine a culture that fights to remove displays of things like the Golden Rule or the Ten Commandments? Could you imagine a culture where prayer can be offered as long as you never utter the name of Jesus? Could you imagine a culture where right there they want to give more rights to an unborn animal than an unborn child? This culture was more concerned for a herd of pigs than they were that a man got healed. Give us the herd. Don't give us the healing. I'm wondering, if Jesus came into Fayetteville, will there be a whole group of people that say, hey, Fayetteville's just fine. We like it just the way it is. Funky. We don't want you. Hey, Jesus, keep Fayetteville funky. You? Why don't you move on to the next region? Do you think that we might have a little bit of that? Some of you have it in your home because you're serious about Jesus. You know what's crazy to me? We try to sell Jesus sometime that, man, you get serious about following Him, your life is going to come together, and the people around, they're just going to want to know what you have. They want to be a part of it. And you know what? You feel exploited because you've gone home, and the people around you can't stand you anymore. And they're wondering why the people at work, you're kind, and you're considerate, and you're helping them out, and they're bothered. Now, the first couple of times you do it, they don't say that much, but the way that you're going with this, you're a threat. Just keep loving. Just keep serving them. You're doing good, people. You're doing good. Okay. So that's how the demons reacted. Let's go this. Oh, in this episode, which way do you lean? Jesus is so powerful that even the demons can show us how to properly react to Him when He shows up. And of course, their reaction was one of dread. Oh, there's Jesus. He's the King of Kings. I got to get over there, get down, because He needs to know that I know who He is. Now, our reaction is not one of dread. Our reaction is one of love. You guys, we run to Jesus because He's magnetic. And we worship Him and bow down before Him because He's majestic. And we acknowledge that He's great because He's worthy. And we want Him to have His way with us because we're just glad to be a part of the team. We do it because we love Him. Do I really get to be a part of your plans and purposes? But I can't believe that I get to be counted as one of your children. What are you thinking? Oh, just a side note. Not all of the people that day, when they saw the demons cast out, not all of the people that day told Jesus He was unwanted. You got to pick up the verse here. Look at verse 18. As Jesus was getting into the boat, the man who had been demon-possessed begged to go with Him. Jesus did not let him, but said, Go home to your own people and tell them how much the Lord has done for you and how He's had mercy on you. So the man went away and began to tell in the Decapolis, which just means that 10-city region, how much Jesus had done for him, and all the people were amazed. And I think this is such a cool, relevant word, because many times what Jesus does, in fact, I think more times than not, what Jesus tells us to do is go back to what we know is familiar, go back to where we are known, and you share that love with the people that God's already brought into your life. Let them see the change that He's doing inside of you, which is what you're doing. Just go back home and tell everybody what the Lord is doing. Show them, love them, serve them. God's kingdom, I don't think, grows any other more effective way than just that. When people who are known, the Spirit gets inside of them and it changes them, and people can't ignore that. Maybe instead of wanting to go to some far country away from here, Jesus is just asking you to stay where you are and love and serve the people where you are. Okay, there's the first episode. Second interruption in Jesus' day comes starting in verse 21. Let's read this text. When Jesus had again crossed over by boat to the other side of the lake, a large crowd gathered around him while he was by the lake. Then one of the synagogue leaders, this guy had a lot of prestige. His name was Jairus. He came, and when he saw Jesus, fell at his feet. He pleaded earnestly with him, "My little daughter's dying. Please come and put your hands on her so that she would be healed and live." So Jesus went with him. A large crowd followed and pressed around him. And a woman was there who had been subject to bleeding for 12 years. She had suffered a great deal under the care of many doctors and spent all that she had. Yet instead of getting better, she grew worse. When she heard about Jesus, she came up behind him in the crowd and touched his cloak, because she thought, "If I just touch his clothes, I'll be healed." Immediately her bleeding stopped, and she felt in her body that she was freed from her suffering. At once, Jesus realized that power had gone out from him. This is weird stuff. He turned around in the crowd and asked, "Who touched my clothes?" "You see the people crowding against you," the disciples answered, "and you ask, 'Who's touched me?'" But Jesus kept looking around to see who had done it. Then the woman, knowing what had happened to her, came and fell at his feet. Notice another reaction to being in the presence of Jesus. Fell at his feet and, trembling with fear, told him the whole truth. He said to her, "Daughter, your faith has healed you. Go in peace and be freed from your suffering." So, he leaves the demoniac who's been restored. They get in the boat and they cross back over to another shoreline, and Jesus is met by this humble synagogue official pleading for the life of his little girl. Jesus agrees to go with him, and en route, while they're moving to go to Jairus' house, this woman who had a 12-year hemorrhage disease reaches out in faith to him. So where the demons react in utter submission, this woman's disease reacted to Jesus in full remission. He was out of it. Jesus' power cancels and removes diseases. Now, I think there's a lot to be drawn from this episode, but one thing I want to do is kind of take it metaphorically to our whole world. I think this woman's condition is kind of our world's condition. Think about our world governments and our world economies and our world securities, militaries, whatever. We've tried so many ways to make our world better, but has our world in fact gotten better? The only hope for our world, for the countries in our world, is Christ. And any other government setup or any other economic plan or any other military might is going to succeed for a time, perhaps, at best. There is only one unshakable kingdom, and there's only one eternal government, and God made it clear that that government rests on the shoulders of Christ. Us a child is born, us the Son is given, and the government will be on His shoulder. And His name will be Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. The only hope for the world, and you know I'm in this right now because of our political season, it's Jesus. So the woman with the 12-year hemorrhage heard the reports about Jesus, and the only thing that made it crazier is that she actually dared to believe those reports. So Jesus, even in the multitudes, he is aware, he sees the individual. He's aware of her faith, he's aware of her, and he's aware of his power leaving of the power leaving his body. In contrast, did you notice the people's reaction? I mean, Jesus was aware of her, and he was aware of her faith and the power leaving his body. And so then when Jesus said, "Who touched me?" their response is, "Who touched you?" I mean, you see the people all around you touching everybody. Everybody touching you. The people are unaware of Jesus and his power. That's the reaction of the folks. So, what about us? You think this world is just kind of spun into motion and then God's standing aloof and he's just watching things unfold? Or do you in fact think that there are evidences of him everywhere? His presence and his power it's exploding around. It's everywhere. So Jesus tells this woman to go in peace. And look at the next interruption. Jesus barely gets those words out of his mouth, beginning with the second part of verse 33. While Jesus was still speaking, I think I forgot to change that slide, skip down there a little bit. While Jesus was still speaking, some people came from the house of Jairus, the synagogue leader. "Your daughter is dead," they said. "Why bother the teacher anymore?" Overhearing what they said, Jesus told them, "Don't be afraid. Just believe." He did not let anyone follow him except Peter, James, and John, the brother of James. When they came to the home of the synagogue leader, Jesus saw a commotion with people crying and wailing loudly. He went in and said to them, "Why all this commotion and wailing? The child is not dead, but asleep." But they laughed at him. After he put them all out, he took the child's father and mother and the disciples who were with him and went in where the child was. He took her by the hand and said to her, "Talitha kum," which means, "Little girl, I say to you, get up." Immediately the girl stood up and began to walk around. She was 12 years old. At this they were completely astonished. He gave strict orders not to let anyone know about this. He told them to give her something to eat. So Jairus lets go of his position and prestige, his pride, his reputation, and he falls down at the feet of Jesus in his daughter's behalf. Many people will not come to Jesus for themselves, but I found out something. They will come to Jesus for people they love. It's ironic, really, in a way. What this synagogue ruler might never have done for himself, he will do for his little girl now. Frankly, this is one of the reasons, one of our main 4 pillars at this church is our kids' ministry. We want our Sunday morning experiences to be real and to offer our excellence because we don't think there's any higher thing anybody can do than to worship the King. And right there with that is we want what's going on the other side of those walls with our kids right now. We are praying that seeds of faith so find their ways into the hearts of these little kids that it has generational effect. Of course, we're a church planting church. We're going to try to help other church planting churches. And the last one is we're all about small groups. Those are our 4 big things. I'm telling you what, that second one, we believe in the kid thing. Now, all of us as parents, we're doing what we can to clothe them and to feed them and shelter them and give them some sort of education. But when it comes about their eternal salvation and the wherewithal to make it through on this planet Earth, we're just like Jairus. Man, we're saying we need some special touches. Because if Jesus is allowed to lay his hands on the family's going to make it. If you don't know that that's the truth, you're just going to have to come away with thinking, you know what? If Jesus said it, and if that's what the people did around him, we're just going to have to believe it. And I think that's what we witnessed over here just a second ago with Hudson and Cheyenne. Hudson needs a little extra convincing. Did you notice that? I tried not to make it too obvious. And do you believe me? No, it's a little much, but I almost had to jump in there with him and body slam him. But I think what Eric and Kristen are trying to do is they're trying to say, Jesus, we need you to touch our kids. Please come and put your hands on our kids so that our family will live. We want to live. I found the report of this little girl's death kind of familiar. Let me explain. We have many voices in our country right now trying to report on America's lost hope. Always kind of cracks me up in a way. Our country is almost done. If this person or that person is elected, we will no longer be the America we've known. Yeah. There's only one way for America to go from this point on, and it's down. No need to pray or talk to Jesus about it anymore because America's gone. I think what Kirk Cameron's doing is good. I'm not talking about that at all. I'm coming together and praying together is good. But I do want you guys to remember, your citizenship in this country is temporary. You're not going to be in America everlasting. Your citizenship's in heaven. In a kingdom that can't be moved. It's built on a foundation that will never crumble. So, don't be a doomsayer. Andy Stanley said this to his church not long ago. I mean, when you really start ragging America and ragging the candidates, you know what happens? Your kids, you're scaring your kids. Don't. Remind them who they are and whose they are. We're part of an eternal kingdom, good folk. Did you notice Jesus' reaction to these people's reports? He doesn't deny it, and he doesn't argue with it. Jesus just ignores it. I love that. He just ignores it. Christian faith ignores rumors that all hope is lost. It's done it all through the centuries. We just ignore that. Jesus never has and never will accept death as a final word. So if others may not want to bother Jesus with something, let's just keep bothering him with everything. Everything. Let's just keep taking it to him. Even when other people say, hey, that's dead and gone. All hope is lost. No, I'm going to keep bothering Jesus with this. Why? Because of passages like Ephesians 3:20. Look at the screen. Now to him who was able to do immeasurably more than all we ask or imagine, according to his power that is at work within us. Look at the message on that one. God can do anything, you know. Far more than you could ever imagine or guess or request in your wildest dreams. He does not do it by pushing us around, but by working within us, his Spirit, deeply, gently within us. Oh, man. How does death react to the presence of Jesus? It omits itself. I love saying that. That sounds funny to me. Death comes up, it immediately omits itself. Sounds like it wets itself. It omits itself. That's what death does. You literally scare the blank out of it. It's gone. It's gone. Death is gone. When Jesus shows up, death omits itself. It doesn't include itself. It leaves itself out. It fails to perform. Death has one function, and when Jesus shows up, it can't do it. I love the way the Scripture uses it. You know the word that the Scripture uses to describe death when Jesus is around? Impotent. Impotent. Death is impotent around Jesus. It has nothing. Nothing. Isn't that's just a beautiful word, isn't it? In that sense. All right. And the people present at Jairus' daughter's sickness, their reaction is unbelief. Unbelief. So there you have Mark chapter 5. You see the outline? Mark chapter 5. Demons reacted to Jesus with submission, while the people told Jesus he's unwanted. And disease reacts to Jesus with remission, while the people were unaware of him. And death omits itself around Jesus, and the people don't believe what is right in front of them in plain sight. What about us? How will we react to Jesus? I guess it's because it's the political season and we get to vote here in a month, and I just can't keep thinking. I don't have very many political heroes, but I have one. And I think it's because he's the first guy I got to vote for when I was 18 years old. Man, I really waved the banner for Ronald Reagan. I thought he was... some of you might disagree with some of his philosophical take, or wherever he stood on the whole liberal conservative spectrum. You know why I liked him? I liked him because he kept slipping God into all of his speeches. And he kept reminding us that we were under him, our nation. It wasn't until Ronald Reagan that I memorized the third stanza to My Country 'Tis of Thee. Our Father's God, you should have heard him say this. Our Father's God, to thee, author of liberty, to thee we sing. Long may our land be bright with freedom's holy light. Protect us by thy might, great God our King. He looked at that audience and he said, you don't think America has a king? Oh, yes, we do. We have a king. It's God. God, and I just went, I like him. I love somebody that reminds me who's in charge. We do have a king in this country. It's God. He's our king. No man. No man. God is our king. Let me show you something I found about him several years ago. I put the whole thing on the screen. Look at this statement he made. Meaning no disrespect to the religious convictions of others, I still can't help wondering how we can explain away, this is Ronald Reagan saying this, I still can't help wondering how we can explain away what is to me the greatest miracle of all and which is recorded in history. No one denies that there was such a man, that he lived, and that he was put to death by crucifixion. Where's the miracle I spoke of? Well, consider this and let your imagination translate the story into your own time, possibly to your own hometown. A young man whose father is a carpenter grows up working in the father's shop. One day he puts down his tools and walks out of his father's shop. He starts preaching on the street corners in the nearby countryside, walking from place to place, preaching all the while, even though he's not an ordained minister. He does this for 3 years, and then is arrested, tried and convicted. There is no court of appeal, so he's executed at age 33 along with 2 common thieves. Those in charge of his execution roll dice to see who gets his clothing, the only possessions he has. His family cannot afford a burial place for him, so he is interred in a borrowed tomb. End of story? No. This uneducated, propertyless man, young man, who left no written word, has, for 2,000 years, had a greater effect on the world than all the rulers, kings, emperors, all the conquerors, generals, and admirals, all the scholars, scientists, and philosophers who have ever lived, all of them put together. How do you explain that unless he really was who he said he was? And I felt like when I was listening to President Reagan say that, I thought, it's right there in plain sight. It's right in front of us. Jesus is it. And I feel like when we go through chapter 5, with this one detour and one interruption and one episode after another, we just go, dude, he's the Lord of the demons and disease and death. I mean, this guy's got my vote. I'm in. I'm in. Right in plain sight. That's why we got this song to sing. Because if he's been with us like this in the past, and goodness knows he's right with us now, well, what in the world do we have to worry about for our future? Okay, church, let's pray. Father, thank you for great texts like